This is a special report from News 3 WSIL.
From snow creating whiteout conditions to trees sagging from the weight of ice and even tornadoes, winter in our region can be wild and unpredictable. That's why it's important that you stay prepared. The Storm Track 3 team has been digging through the data and we've got you covered.
Some weather events create a lasting mark in our memory, so much so that anytime a forecast is even slightly similar, you begin comparing it to that first experience. For many in our region, January of 2009 stands out.
People don't know what to do. It's as bad as it gets.
In 2009, between Monday, January 26th to Wednesday, the 28th, some areas received upwards of 2 inches of ice, a catastrophic amount. Others had snow and sleet totals between 6 to 10 inches. By the end of Tuesday, over 90% of southwestern Kentucky was without power.
I remember that it was really quiet. The night that it hit, I was at home and I could hear, as it started accumulating, you could hear the trees, the limbs cracking and things like that.
Keith Todd, a public information officer for the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, said one of the top challenges they faced was the constant cleanup from fallen trees, and it was one they dealt with through July.
I know there's one photo where it shows you what appears to be a one-lane road snaking through some trees, and it's actually US 641 that's a US highway.
Basic necessities like food, water, and gas were getting hard to come by. Communication, nearly impossible, and temperatures were continuing to drop with lows in the teens. Many residents in Kentucky, Illinois, and Missouri went weeks without power.
I wasn't prepared to deal with the darkness. And I remember it was so dark, you couldn't tell where you were because there were no lights, you couldn't see anything.
Todd said when the local emergency management team began helping his staff respond to this historic ice storm, they found a surprising way to go about it.
A lot of the types of issues we were seeing were very similar to what we would experience in an earthquake. So they reached up and pulled down the earthquake plan off of the shelf and started flipping through it.
Luckily, technology, social media, and de-icing techniques have improved in the last 13 years. Todd said dealing with a winter storm like this even helped them be better prepared for handling Mayfield. Storm Track 3 meteorologist Katie Melvin.
Winter weather is coming, and that means you need to prepare. But it's not just at home, it's also when you're on the go.
Well, just like with any emergency, preparedness begins before it happens.
Whether it's ice or snow-covered roads, you should always prepare in case of an emergency. Ryan Buckingham, the director of Franklin County Emergency Management Agency, says his crew is prepared, but you should prepare in case of longer wait times.
Don't travel if you don't need to travel, because we see a lot of vehicles that go off the side of the roadway, and when that happens, it overloads the emergency response system, so sometimes those folks are stranded for quite a while until we can get to them.
You'll want to make sure to pack the essentials. Everything from food, water, winter clothes, shovel, batteries, flashlights, and medications you may need.
If you're driving and you become stuck on the ice or the snow, you can always use your car floor mats. Just wedge it under your tire. It'll help give you some extra traction. If that doesn't work, you can always use sand or cat litter.
So a scenario that could happen if you slide off the roadway is your vehicle dies, and if that's the case, you don't have any heat. Hypothermia in those situations can set in very rapidly, so it's important to make sure you have preparedness materials in your car that can keep you warm.
It's also just as important to make sure that you're keeping up with your car's maintenance and that you have the proper tires for your car.
But tread and four-wheel drive will not promise you won't end up needing roadside assistance. Emily Pike, News 3.
Over 1,300 people are killed and nearly 117,000 are injured in vehicle crashes on snowy, slushy, or icy pavement every year. That's why the Illinois Department of Transportation has dozens of plows working anytime there's winter weather in the forecast.
Snow, ice, and thousands of miles to cover.
District 9 encompasses over 3,600 miles in its southern 16 counties. So if you put that into perspective, you can drive from San Francisco to Boston and not cover the miles that we have to cover on each event.
And in our region, each winter storm is different. Rob Grave with IDOT District 9 oversees the operations of snow and ice removal. determining when to use chemicals and when to use salt.
If it turns in from a rain event to a snow event, we obviously, we can't brine the structures because it will wash away. So a lot of times we'll pre-spread salt, if we anticipate it coming, and we're in contact with our forecasters, both local and our national forecaster.
During winter weather, IDOT asks for the public's patience. To help communicate road conditions, IDOT is working with advanced technology.
For us, our trucks have tablets in them, and we have the guys and gals that are out on the routes, they punch in a code, and our rating system is from 6 to 1, and so we give these codes and it'll update on a map which the public can view.
That system gives fast and reliable updates on an interactive map available on IDOT's website, allowing drivers to see the road condition directly from those who are out on them.
When we think of winter weather, ice and snow typically come to mind first. But our area is no stranger to strong storms and tornadoes, even during the colder months.
A lot of people equate that we only get strong to violent tornadoes in the spring, but we have records of plenty of strong to violent tornadoes in the fall and into the winter months.
Meteorologist Christine Welgus with the National Weather Service of Paducah says the fluctuating jet stream is a major component in keeping severe weather around nearly year-round.
Sometimes in the winter months, we don't need as much heat and humidity, or instability as we like to call it, in the wintertime because the shear is usually strong enough where it compensates for that lack of heat and instability. But sometimes you have a lot of heat, a lot of humidity, and a lot of wind shear in the environment, and that's when you get events such as December 10th.
The December 10th tornado was rated an EF4 with peak wind speeds near 190 miles per hour. And yet, it's not alone. The last F5 in southern Illinois took place December 18th, 1957.
There were multiple tornadoes that moved across portions of southern Illinois in the upper end category, EF3, EF4, and then an EF5, which happened in Perry County, Illinois.
Welgus says there are 3 things you can do to stay safe during severe weather. Be aware, have multiple ways to receive warnings, and act when a warning is issued.
You need to take action and go to your place of shelter and not wait till the last minute. I can't tell you how many stories I heard from people on December 10th who did wait to the last minute to take action. And some of them, thankfully were okay. Some of them were not.
Tornadoes are more likely to occur after sunset during the winter months, which means you won't see it coming.
We've already seen the first snow of the season, but does Old Man Winter have more up his sleeve? Coming up, the Storm Track 3 team breaks down this year's winter forecast.
The Storm Track 3 team has been looking over the data for more than a month, looking at current patterns and also taking a peek back at historical records. Seasonal forecasting presents many challenges, but we've put together a winter forecast to give you an idea of what to expect and how to plan.
You've probably heard of El Nino, or the El Nino Southern Oscillation. It's one of the most famous seasonal influencers. The warm version of these events is El Nino, where the trade winds are weaker, allowing warm water to build off the west coast of South America. The cold version is called La Nina. During La Nina events, the trade winds are stronger than usual, pushing more warm water away from South America and toward Asia. This creates an upwelling, bringing colder water from below up towards the surface. These cold waters then in the Pacific push the jet stream northward, setting up a ridge over Alaska, sending the cold air south into the northern United States. This winter will be the 3rd La Nina in a row.
And that's not the only influencer. Another is the North Atlantic Oscillation. While ocean water temperatures can have an influence, the NAO for short is classified in a positive or negative phase based on the location of large-scale high and low pressure. It appears that the NAO will begin to go into a negative phase by the end of November and into December. When this occurs, we see high pressure build into Greenland and another area of high pressure in the North Pacific. This sends warm air north into the Arctic regions and, like an ocean wave, displaces the cold air southward, usually in the central and eastern U.S.
This pattern can also lead to a very high amplitude jet stream, large troughs associated with blasts of cold air, and then days later, big warm-ups. La Nina years support this. Frigid temperatures with snow, and within a few days, temperatures into the 60s. Last season also brought a similar setup. In early February, we saw highs in the 60s, and then a few days later, 6 inches of sleet. Later in the month, we saw nearly an inch of ice with a warm-up in the upper 70s almost a week later. These big swings in temperature can bring strong storms, including the possibility of tornadoes.
Great information. Putting it all together, here's what I expect to see this year. A third consecutive La Nina winter. We had one last year, and we had one the year before that. Negative NAO, that North Atlantic oscillation, during the month of December, and you combine that with very warm water in the North Pacific. That's likely to be the driver for a front-loaded winter, sending several big blasts of cold air southward earlier in the season, and really do think that we may see an early snow. And we have not seen a lot of snow in recent years during the month of December, but a medium-sized snow event is likely on the table. The cold air should certainly be in place. Drought has been one of the biggest storylines this fall. Cold air is dry air, and drought is likely to linger through at least the first half of the winter. By January and February, temperatures will begin to moderate a bit. The storm track will remain fairly active, though, with that high amplitude jet stream. Some similarities to the last couple of years where we see these big swings in temperature. That storm track, though, will be a key of what kind of precipitation we see. If you're looking for big snow, well, it may need to be earlier in the year when we've got the cold air in place. January and February, the freezing line may cut right through our region, and that could lead to higher chances for sleet and freezing rain. If you're a snow lover, you want to see a big storm system track out of Texas through Memphis, Hopkinsville, Kentucky. You want to be on the north side of this area of low pressure. That is a favorable storm track there for big snow here in our region. However, by January and February, looking more like we may see some of these stalled boundaries. Warm air to the south and riding over top of some of the cold air down here at the ground level. And you combine that, of course, with that high amplitude jet stream, a lot of moisture in place. That's a bigger threat for sleet and freezing rain. Big swings in temperature, though, throughout the winter, especially through the second half of the winter. And that high amplitude jet stream could lead to one chance for severe storms this winter, and especially into mid to late February. There are so many moving parts, though, in the atmosphere around the globe, from ocean currents in the Pacific to snow cover in Siberia. Even what happens in the stratosphere miles above the Earth can have an impact on our local weather patterns. One thing is for certain, though, winter can be pretty wild here in our region. The Storm Track 3 team has you covered.